This is Greenland. To most of you, it is just a shape on a map, a massive white void at the top of the world that you fly over on your way to London or Frankfurt. For the last 80 years, that is all it was. A frozen relic of the Cold War, technically owned by Denmark, but largely forgotten by the serious people who run the global economy. But if you have been paying attention to the signals coming out of Washington in the last few months, you know that the white void is about to become the most contested piece of real estate on Earth. Donald Trump is back in power, and he has dusted off an old file that his predecessors left in the basement. He wants to buy Greenland. When he said it, the first time in 2019, the media laughed. They made jokes about golden towers and Nuuk. They treated it like the whim of a real estate tycoon who did not understand how nations worked. Nobody's laughing now, because in 2026, the context has changed. We just watched the United States military execute a raid on Caracas that shattered every norm of international diplomacy. We watched them extract the leader of Venezuela and seize the country's oil infrastructure without asking for permission from the UN or NATO or anyone else. That operation sent a message that was louder than any press conference. The old rules are gone. The polite fiction of the rules-based international order is dead. The United States is entering a phase of imperial consolidation. It is securing the perimeter. And if Venezuela was about securing the southern flank, Greenland is about securing the roof. The United States is preparing to make a move that will redraw the map of the North Atlantic. This is not just about buying an island. It is about seizing the control panel for the 21st century. It is about three specific things: the rare earth minerals that run your phone, the radar that stops nuclear war, and the shipping lanes that will replace the Panama Canal. But to understand why this is happening right now, you have to understand the secret history that brought us here. You have to understand that the United States has already tried to buy Greenland twice, and they have already built a city inside its ice. Inside the Global Economy breaks down the hidden forces shaping the world economy. Let us go back to 1946. The dust has just settled on World War II. Europe is in ruins. But in Washington, the strategists are looking at a globe. They realize it's something terrifying. In the age of bombers and missiles, the Atlantic Ocean is no longer a moat. If the Soviet Union wants to attack America, they will not come across the ocean. They will come over the North Pole. The shortest line between Moscow and New York goes directly over Greenland, so President Harry Truman makes a move. He invites the Danish foreign minister to Washington. They sit down in a quiet room, and Truman makes an offer that sounds like fiction today. He offers Denmark $100 million. Not in credit, not in paper money, in gold bars. $100 million in 1946 is billions today. It was a massive fortune. Truman essentially offered to buy the island outright. He wanted to turn Greenland into a U.S. territory just like Alaska. The Danes were shocked. They politely refused. They said Greenland was not a colony to be sold. It was a partner in their kingdom. Truman did not push it. He figured he could get what he wanted, which was military bases, without owning the deed. So they signed a defense treaty, and the U.S. built Thule Air Base. But that refusal, that no from Denmark in 1946, is viewed by modern strategists as one of the biggest failures in American history, because they did not know what was under the ice. They thought they were buying a landing strip. They did not know they were walking away from the Saudi Arabia of minerals. Fast forward to the 1960s. The Cold War is freezing hot. The U.S. Army comes up with a plan that is so insane it was classified for decades. It was called Project Iceworm. The public story was that the Army was building a research station called Camp Century to study the climate. They released nice newsreels showing soldiers smiling in parkas drilling ice cores for science. The truth was very different. Beneath the ice, the Army Corps of Engineers was digging a city. They carved 4,000 kilometers of tunnels into the glacier. They built a movie theater, a chapel, a hospital, and barracks for hundreds of men all buried 30 feet under the surface. And to power this secret city, they brought in a portable nuclear reactor, the PM-2A. They shipped a nuclear power plant to the most remote place on Earth and plugged it in. Why? What were they doing down there? They were building a launch pad. The plan for Project Iceworm was to hide 600 Iceman nuclear missiles inside the Greenland ice sheet. They wanted a mobile nuclear train system that could shuttle missiles back and forth under the ice, invisible to Soviet satellites ready to launch a strike over the pole at a moment's notice. Think about the audacity of that. The United States built a secret nuclear missile base inside the territory of a NATO ally powered by an unauthorized reactor without really telling the Danish public the whole truth. But nature fought back. The engineers made a miscalculation. They thought the ice was static. It was not. The glacier was moving. It was alive. Slowly, relentlessly, the ice began to crush the tunnels. The nuclear reactor room started to warp. The ceilings began to lower. By 1966, the base was structurally unsound. The Army had to evacuate. They pulled out the reactor, collapsed the tunnels, and left the rest of the camp to be buried by the snow. For 50 years, Camp Century sat there, crushed and forgotten. A toxic tomb of diesel fuel PCBs and radioactive wastewater slowly moving toward the coast as the ice melts. Why does this history matter in 2026? Because it proves a fundamental point. The United States has never viewed Greenland as a foreign country. It views Greenland as a strategic extension of the American mainland. It views it as property that is currently being managed by a caretaker, and now the caretaker is being asked to leave. This brings us to the present day. The why has shifted from nuclear missiles to something even more critical: the supply chain. You have heard about the trade war with China. You know about the tariffs. But the real war is not about cheap TVs or electric cars. It is about the raw materials that make them work. Right now, China has a stranglehold on the global supply of rare earth elements. These are the 17 magic metals, neodymium, dysprosium, terbium, that are essential for modern life. You cannot build an F-35 fighter jet without them. You cannot build a wind turbine without them. You cannot build a guidance system for a cruise missile without them. China refines 90% of the world's supply. If Xi Jinping decides to close the faucet, the American military-industrial complex grinds to a halt in 6 months. It is a kill switch for the U.S. economy. Washington has been desperate to find an alternative source. They looked in Africa, they looked in California, but the answer was hiding in southern Greenland. There's a place called Kvanefjeld. To the locals, it is just a mountain near the town of Narsak. But to a geologist, it is a freak of nature. It contains one of the largest concentrations of rare earth oxides on the planet. And crucially, it also contains massive amounts of uranium. For years, a company tried to develop this mine, but there was a catch. A Chinese company, Shenghe Resources, bought a massive stake in the project. They were quietly positioning themselves to own the mine before a single shovel hit the ground. China was about to do to Greenland what it did to Africa, lock up the resources, before the West even woke up. In 2021, the US government panicked. They could not legally stop the Chinese company, so they used diplomatic pressure. Suddenly, a left-wing party in Greenland won an election on an environmental platform. They passed a law banning uranium mining. Since the rare earths at Kvanefjeld are mixed with uranium, the law effectively killed the mine. The Chinese deal was dead. But do not be naive. Do not think for a second that the US wanted to kill that mine to save the environment. They wanted to put it on ice until they could control it. Washington did not want the mine closed. They wanted the Chinese out. Now with Trump back in office and the America First resource strategy in full swing, watch for that law to be reversed. But this time, the miners will not be Chinese. We are already seeing the new players arrive. And they are not traditional mining companies. They are tech companies. A startup called Cobalt Metals has been scanning the west coast of Greenland. This is not a normal mining company. It is backed by Bill Gates and Jeff Bezos. It uses artificial intelligence to analyze geological data, satellite imagery, magnetic resonance, historical drilling logs. It creates a Google Maps of the Earth's crust. The AI looked at Greenland and lit up like a Christmas tree. Cobalt has found a deposit of nickel and copper that is fully consistent with the Norilsk-Talnakh system in Russia. For those who do not know geology, Norilsk is the biggest nickel deposit in the world. It is the reason Russia is a mining superpower. The AI is saying that Greenland has a twin of that deposit. This is the trillion-dollar secret. Greenland is not just an island, it is a treasure chest that has been frozen shut for 10,000 years. And now, thanks to climate change, the lid is opening. This brings us to the uncomfortable truth about the climate. For the rest of the world, melting ice is a tragedy. It means rising sea levels and flooded cities. But for the geopolitical strategists in Washington and Moscow, melting ice is an opportunity. As the Greenland ice sheet recedes, it exposes the land. It makes mining cheaper. It makes logistics easier. But more importantly, it opens the water. Look at a map of the Arctic Ocean. For all of human history, it has been a wall of ice. You could not sail across it. If you wanted to ship goods from Shanghai to Rotterdam, you had to go the long way through the Suez Canal or the Panama Canal. That takes 30 to 40 days. It burns massive amounts of fuel. But if the ice melts, the Northwest Passage opens. This is the holy grail of shipping, a route over the top of Canada and Greenland that cuts the journey by 40%. Whoever controls Greenland controls the eastern gate of the Northwest Passage. China calls this the Polar Silk Road. They have been trying to buy airports in Greenland for years. They offered to build massive runways in Nuuk and in Ilulissat. They said it was for tourism. They said they wanted to fly in tourists to see the icebergs. The Pentagon saw right through it. If China builds the airports, China owns the logistics. If China owns the logistics, they can station jets there. Suddenly, you have Chinese fighters 20 minutes from the Canadian border. In 2018, the US Secretary of Defense called the Danish government and gave them an ultimatum. You do not let China build those airports. We will pay for them. Or you will pay for them. But Beijing does not pour concrete in our hemisphere. Denmark scrambled. They took out loans. They built the airports themselves. The crisis was averted. But it was a close call. It showed Washington that relying on Denmark, a small European country with limited budget to defend a continent-sized island, is a risk they can no longer take. This is the core of the argument for the purchase. It is not about vanity. It is about the Monroe Doctrine. In the Venezuela video, we talked about the Trump corollary, the idea that the Western Hemisphere is closed to foreign competitors. The map does not stop at the Caribbean. It goes all the way to the North Pole. The U.S. has recently filed a legal claim to expand its extended continental shelf. Now, this is a mechanism under international law where a country can claim the ocean floor if it proves that the geology is an extension of its landmass. The U.S. has claimed a massive chunk of the Arctic Ocean, an area twice the size of California. But to hold that claim, you need territory. You need a footprint. Greenland is the anchor. If the U.S. acquires Greenland, its maritime border instantly touches Europe. The Atlantic Ocean becomes a NATO lake. The Russian Navy, which operates out of Murmansk, would be trapped. Let us talk about that Russian threat. The Gyayuk Gap. Right now, Russia has a new class of submarines, the Yasen class. These are silent nuclear-powered attack subs that carry hypersonic cruise missiles. They are the most dangerous naval weapon on Earth. If they slip past Greenland and get into the deep Atlantic, they can park off the coast of Washington, D.C. and hold the capital hostage. We would not even know they were there until the missiles launched. The only way to stop them is to bottle them up in the Arctic. To do that, you need sonar arrays, maritime patrol aircraft, and hunter-killer subs stationed in Greenland. You need to turn the island into a fortress. Thule Air Base, now called Pituffik Space Base, is the crown jewel of this fortress. It sits at the top of the world. Its radar looks north directly over the pole, staring into the heart of Russia. Because of the curvature of the Earth, this radar can see a missile launch in Siberia minutes before any radar in the U.S. Those minutes are the difference between interception and impact. They are the difference between life and death for American cities. Currently, the U.S. operates Pituffik under a treaty. But what if Greenland becomes independent? There is a strong independence movement in Greenland. The local population is roughly 56,000 people, mostly Inuit. They have a distinct culture and language. They do not feel Danish. Many of them want to break away from Copenhagen. But they have a problem. They are poor. The Greenlandic economy relies on a block grant from Denmark, about $600 million a year. That pays for the schools, the hospitals, the government. If they declare independence, Denmark cuts the check. The economy collapses instantly. This is the independence trap. And this is the U.S. entry point. The strategy is not to invade Greenland with tanks. The strategy is to outbid Denmark. $600 million a year is a rounding error for the U.S. Treasury. We spend that on paper clips. The White House is looking at a deal structure similar to what we have with Palau or Micronesia. It is called a Compact of Free Association. Here is how the pitch goes. People of Greenland, you want independence from Denmark. We will fund it. We will give you a check for $2 billion a year. We will build you new hospitals, new schools, new ports. We will give every Greenlander a U.S. passport or a special status. You govern your own domestic affairs. You keep your culture. But in exchange, the United States takes full responsibility for your defense and foreign policy. And we get the mineral rights. It is the deal of the century for the Greenlanders. They get rich, they get protected, they get rid of the colonial masters in Copenhagen. And for the U.S., we get the rare earths, we get the gold, we get the radar. And we close the door on China and Russia forever. Denmark, of course, would be furious. It would be a diplomatic crisis within NATO. But what can Denmark do? They are a nation of 6 million people. They cannot defend Greenland militarily. They cannot afford to develop the mines. They are merely holding on to a title deed they cannot enforce. In the new era of gunboat diplomacy that we discussed with Venezuela, weakness is an invitation for a takeover. There is one more layer to this, the gold. We have talked about the death of the dollar. We have talked about how central banks are moving to hard assets. If the U.S. dollar is going to survive the debt crisis of the late 2020s, it might need to be partially backed by commodities again. Not a full gold standard, but a resource-backed basket. Imagine if the U.S. Treasury could suddenly add $1 trillion of proven gold, uranium, and rare earth reserves to its balance sheet. That is what acquiring Greenland does. It strengthens the solvency of the American state. It is a balance sheet acquisition. So when you see Donald Trump tweeting about Greenland, or when you see reports of U.S. diplomats visiting Nuuk, do not dismiss it. They are negotiating the terms of the acquisition. The infrastructure is already being built. The U.S. consulate in Nuuk has reopened. The State Department is pouring money into educational programs in Greenland. They are winning hearts and minds. They are preparing the population for the switch. The timeline is accelerating because the ice is accelerating. Every year, more of the island becomes accessible. Every year, the Russian subs get quieter. Every year, the Chinese hunger for resources grows. The United States has decided that it cannot afford to leave the third pole neutral. Neutrality is a luxury of the past. In 1946, we offered gold. In 2019, we offered a real estate deal. In 2026, we are making an offer they cannot refuse. The ultimate irony is that climate change, the very thing the US political right has downplayed for years, is delivering them their greatest prize. A thawed, accessible resource, rich continent-sized fortress. Greenland is the final frontier of American expansion. It is the last piece of the Monroe Doctrine puzzle. And if history is any guide when Washington decides it needs a piece of land to survive, it usually gets it. Watch the Kvanefjeld mine. Watch the elections in Nuuk. Watch the upgrading of the radar at Pituffik. The takeover is not coming. It has already started. And for the rest of the world, the message is clear. The Arctic is closed. This is American territory now. We need to consider the cultural impact too. The Inuit people have lived on that ice for thousands of years. They have seen empires come and go. Vikings settled there and vanished. The Danes arrived and stayed. Now the Americans are coming with their checkbooks and their AI scanners. The question is whether the people of Greenland will be partners in this new future or just tenants in a military base. The deal being discussed in Washington includes promises of autonomy. But history shows that when strategic interests are at stake, local autonomy often evaporates. Look at Diego Garcia in the Indian Ocean. The locals were removed to make way for a bomber base. Look at Puerto Rico. American citizens, but without a vote in Congress. The Greenlanders are wary. They know their land is valuable. They know they have leverage. But leverage only works if you have the power to say no. And with 3 superpowers circling the Arctic, the option to say no might be disappearing. This is why the next election in Greenland will be the most important in its history. It will not be about local taxes or fishing quotas. It will be a referendum on alignment. Do they stay with Europe, which offers respect but no money? Or do they go with America, which offers money but demands submission? The smart money is on the deal. The economic gravity is too strong. The strategic necessity is too high. The purchase of Greenland will likely happen in stages. First a trade deal, then a security pact, then a currency union, and finally the flag will change. It will be gradual. It will be bureaucratic. But the end result will be the same. The United States is building a wall around the Western Hemisphere. The bricks in that wall are Venezuela, Panama, Mexico, Canada, and now Greenland. It is a Fortress America strategy designed to survive the chaos of the 21st century. Inside that fortress, there is energy independence, there is food security, and there are the minerals needed to build the future. Outside that fortress, the world is getting colder and more dangerous. Greenland is the keystone. Without it, the wall has a hole at the top. With it, the wall is complete. So the next time you look at a map, do not see Greenland as a white void. See it as the most important battlefield of our time. See it as the place where the future of the American empire will be decided. The ice is melting and the wolves are gathering. The race for the Arctic is the race for survival. And the United States intends to win. Inside the global economy, we'll keep watching the ice. Because when the ice moves, the world moves with it. Stay vigilant.